the process of you getting signed, what was that like? Who did you talk to during that period, and how was that? Because it's got to be like much different for somebody that's got to switch continents.
Yeah, so my process was actually a lot longer than what I think a lot of people realize. So basically, to kind of summarize it, in April of 2019, I did a Mania week. So I think it was like my second or third Mania week on the Indies, and I did a few shows. And there was an indie show that I did, and I was on it. Indy Hartwell was on it. Shazza was there, and a few others were there. I
That's a
think Jess
bummer.
Troy might have been. Jess might have been on that too. Yeah. So
Hate to hear that Shaza was there. Hate to hear it.
right, I know. Well, I mean, it is what it is. Yeah. So there was quite a few of us on that, and it was just an indie show in New Jersey. Like, we didn't hear anything of it, didn't know anything of it. Indy had already been in communication with Canyon about getting signed. I hadn't had anything to do with WWE. I also had returned from injury a month before, so I pretty much did a year on the Indies, did 10 months out with an injury, and then returned like a month before I did this America trip. So my initial character was like a masked luchador gimmick. My name is Facebrook. It's a whole thing. So I switched from that to Steph DeLander in this time. So I'd only been Steph DeLander for a few weeks. I had brand new gear I'd never wrestled in before. I wasn't even the Pipe and Powerhouse at this point. I was still figuring out myself. Anyway, so we're doing this show. I had like a really terrible match. It was like a
Oh no.
7-woman gauntlet, no entrance music, no nothing. Like, it was an absolute free for all. So I had this match, and then all of a sudden, everyone's kind of chatting that Canyon and Regal were there, and we didn't know that. And I was like, oh my god, like, I've just gone out and done this in front of them. Anyway, so it was intermission. Indy went up and spoke to Canyon. And I said to her, I'm like, should I go and speak to Canyon? And she was like, 100%, like, go right now. And I was like, oh my God, like, I didn't do well. I don't think I look very good. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, she forced me to. So I went up and I was like, hey, Canyon, my name's Steph. And I was expecting him to be like, you need to learn how to work. You need to look better. You need to like figure out all of your shit because this is not good. Anyway, I went up to him and he was like, you looked amazing. As soon as you came out, I was like, who is this? I wrote your name down. He was like, get my email address and we'll go from there. So I was like, oh shit. Like, oh my goodness. Okay. So then I came back. I knew it was Mania week, so I was like, I'm gonna give it a week to like let everything kind of settle before I email him. I sent that email off. I didn't hear back for like another 3 or 4 weeks, and I was like, oh, like
Yeah.
whatever. Everyone makes a million promises in wrestling, but just one of those things. And then it was I always mess up the date. I think it was the 11th of May or the 1st of May, some date in May. It was a Wednesday and it was midnight in 2019. And I was lying in bed and Indy messages me and she goes, hey, Canyon just called me and he offered me a contract. And I was like, oh my God, really? And she was like, yeah, 100%. And I was like, oh my God, he is on his phone right now. I was like, I'm
Yes.
going to double text him. I'm going to send him another email. I don't care. So I pick up my phone. I'm like, hey, Canyon, don't know if you saw my last one. Here's a match, blah, blah. Put my phone down. A second later, ding. I was like, no, it can't be him. Surely not. Pick up my phone. I check my phone and it's Canyon. And he goes, hey, Steph, I spoke to Mr. Regal and he said that you would be a great hire as long as you have the right attitude. When will you be in the US or the UK? And I was like, floored. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that, like, all I had to do was send that message. You know what I mean? Like, maybe I never would have come back again if I didn't chase up. Anyway, so that led to me doing a tryout in the UK in June of 2019. And I basically was told at that tryout that I was signed.
That's incredible.
I was told that I was going to be starting in January of 2020.
Oh.
And then obviously, it gets to January and they're like, oh, we're slowing down our incoming talent pipeline. So we're going to start you in March. I was like, okay, all good. And then it gets to March and then COVID hits. And then it's like, oh, we're going to shoot for, August. And I'm like, okay, no worries. And then it gets to August and like, oh, we're going to shoot for November. And then it's, so the next kind of 18 months we're living in 3-month increments of waiting to hear back, then getting delayed, then waiting to hear back, then getting delayed. I
no.
couldn't really make any like long-term life decisions in Australia because I knew I was eventually going to move. I just didn't know if it was 3 months or 2 years, and it ended up being almost 2 years. And I finally got over in March of 2021.